You're listening to Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. On each episode, we sit down with key industry experts to discover more about what's happening in the world of learning and development, from current trends and insights to the most valuable lessons learned along the way. Join us for a fresh perspective on all things training and the best direction forward.
Welcome to the Learning Leader Spotlight, where we interview the learning leaders of today to help the learning leaders of tomorrow. My name is Lori Fancher, and I'm a relationship manager with Training Pros, and Training Pros is the sponsor of this podcast. Training Pros is a contract L&D staffing company, and what we like to say at Training Pros is when you have more projects than people, let us help you find the right consultant with confidence. Today, we have a wonderful guest and a knowledge expert in the L&D field and a leader in the L&D field, of course, and it's Katie Campbell. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Katie is the Senior Director of Talent Management and Learning at Equifax.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Katie, I'm excited to have you here today on this episode.
I'm excited to be here.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and like a 30-second overview of who Katie is and the work that you do?
Sure. I serve as what I would call the talent strategy lead for Workforce Solutions, which is one of the largest business units within Equifax. And I act as the bridge between corporate vision and execution. Essentially, I help to ensure that the company has the right people in the right seats and that those people have the skill sets they need to be successful in their job. I get to focus on performance and succession, leading some of those high stakes things like succession planning and executive assessments and coaching and those sorts of things. And then also learning and development strategy and of course, team leadership. So I'm responsible for a good part of that human architecture of the business to make sure that we are scalable, repeatable, and high performing.
Wow, I love that. That's a lot. You're really covering a lot of talent, aren't you? Not just the L&D, but coupling it also with talent management.
It's both. And there is a global talent management team as well. So I don't want to not give credit where it's due for them also, but definitely doing that for the Workforce Solutions part of the business in particular.
So what first attracted you to the L&D space?
Honestly, I didn't even know it existed. I ended up in this, learning as a kind of a fluke. When I was in sixth grade, so maybe 12, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I have always kind of liked helping people learn and helping them, find ways to be better. And so I thought about that and I shadowed a kindergarten class and I walked out of there and said, good gravy, I cannot do this as a job. So I kind of let it go and I went and studied business and was working as an auditor, a compliance auditor at the time, and met who would be my boss at a wedding. And she worked for the Credit Union Association and said, hey, Katie, I have this job I think you would be great at. Will you come interview? And I didn't even know that corporate learning was a thing. And I've done it ever since. I don't want to say what year it was. It was a little bit of time ago, but really fortunate for me that ended up happening because I ended up in something I love and didn't even know it existed.
That's wonderful. And I think that's the best part of being in our field is that we are helping others achieve their very, very best.
When you think about development and people, trying to learn new skills or move into new jobs, it's such a fun and engaging thing to be able to help people do. That's my favorite thing about my job.
There's been a lot of change in our field, especially recently. What would you say are the most impactful changes that you've seen to our field in the last 5 years?
That is a great question. I think probably it would be remiss to not, of course, acknowledge AI. AI is changing everything, learning and development included. And when you think about also empowering people to work effectively with technology as a teammate, I think that learning and development plays a really critical role. And also when you think about pulling out some of the less skilled parts of people's job and having those be done by an agent instead, then helping them to be ready for the other things that they need to do in terms of skills and capabilities is really critical. And also when you think about the need for the human element in conjunction with AI and making sure that people have the right soft skills and, really can do the human part of their job, then becomes more important too. So I think that's been a big one. And just in general for us, I think also moving to a skills-based model instead of other models has been a big shift, and one that I think has been really powerful in terms of tying to business outcomes, especially. Learning ROI can sometimes be a little squishy. And so when you think about building those skills and capabilities and help people demonstrate that, that's a great way to also be able to drive business results.
Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of my clients and colleagues are moving to a skills-based model, skills-based approach.
Of course, it's a trend. So I imagine a lot of people on the podcast probably talk about that, but we would be included in that group at this point. Of course, we still have other things going on at the same time, but when we think about how we're assessing and looking at what do we need to do and where should we invest and what skills do we need, that's really been helpful. Human capital is one of those things that means different things to different people. So I hesitate to use those words because I don't want that to be polarizing to people, but that's how we're thinking about it. And what I love about it is it makes it really easy from my job's perspective to know where we need to invest and to know, what do we need to do? You have exactly what your gaps are, right?
Yeah, and it's a journey. It's a long
Yes.
journey. It's not a it's not a quick solution that you can
No, it
implement.
is not.
Okay, so we've talked about most recent changes. When you think about what you're wrestling with, what you have before you right now, what are you anticipating to be big changes in the future?
I read a really interesting article about Microsoft. And when you think about organizational design and how just the world is changing and the way that we're working and what jobs even look like, they made sweeping changes to their human resources department. And instead of trying to stick AI in, they built the roles around the capabilities that they're focused on. And I feel like a lot of companies are going to end up moving in that direction when you think about organizational design. They're really going to focus on finding the structure that they need. And then, of course, as learning professionals, then we had the opportunity to help them get the people where they need to go to be ready for those new jobs.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the org design piece and the massive flex and change there that they must be wrestling with. The folks that have been primarily doing that work.
And it's very different when you think about AI being a part of it instead of people, and even human resources. It's not all humans anymore. Some of the resources are technologies. I think the world is going to continue to move more in that direction. And I think it'll be really exciting for all of us in learning to be able to play a big role in that.
So what have you come to realize as the most important skill set on L&D teams?
One thing that's important to me is listening, going in and really trying to hear what's going on and understand the problem. A lot of times we assume that it's a learning issue, and it may be a learning issue, but it isn't always. So, really making sure that you are listening to your client and then, of course, overlaying what you know as an expert to kind of help them figure out a solution that makes sense. Flexibility is really important with all of the things going on and the pace of change that's going to just keep getting faster for all of us. Effective change management and change fatigue and all of those things are very real. So making sure that any learning that we're doing is thoughtful and deliberate and also well planned, I think is important. But then being flexible and being able to, move with the times and go where the tide is taking you when it's needed is also pretty important. And sometimes, especially in learning, it takes a long time sometimes to put programs together, right? Put a lot of work into something, and it's easy to want to say, well, let's just do what we have, but that isn't always the right answer.
Absolutely. That flexibility is a key skill for sure, especially these days. And when you think about your journey to where you are right now, who is the most influential mentor that has been a part of your journey?
I would say one of the important leaders that worked with me who has helped me at a number of different points in my career, I would say, is a lady named Tina Frausto. I have not always worked in HR. I'm in HR now, but I've done learning in operational settings as well. And so being a part of operations, she was a female leader who was very successful and very effective, but also very authentic and embraced who she was and brought that to the table. And I had never seen somebody do that well. And that kind of changed my world. and she was kind enough to work with me and mentor me. So from that perspective, she was one of my biggest mentors and people who just helped me learn and grow as a human and figure out what my leadership style was and how I wanted to behave as a leader. So I really appreciate her for that. A gentleman named Larry Sewell, who was a colleague of my dad's, was the first learning leader that I had ever met and worked with. And he really helped me to understand what that meant. So I appreciate him for that. And then more recently, a woman on my team who is named Lori Sawhill. I had never worked in HR and I did get certifications to help me be grounded, but it's a very different world. And, working through others and influencing with HR, you work through HR rather than being a part of the business and having the same leader. And that was different for me. And, knowing how to do the right things at the right times and be able to get things done is always really important. And Lori was really helpful to me in kind of unraveling some of that. It's kind of a closed society in some ways, HR is. And so having her mentorship in that space was also really helpful. So I've been fortunate to have a number of awesome people who've been willing to help me along the way.
Well, we need those folks in our lives, don't we?
Amen.
And I love that you mentioned that one of the people that was your mentor helped you really understand who you are, which I think is where it all starts. Your leadership style, your approach to problem solving and all of that is really, really key as a foundation to do great work. So, favorite source for industry news and information, where does Katie go?
I can't say that I have just one. Certainly,
Oh,
being an HR SHRM and HR related things are always important to have awareness of. I also like Gartner and other similar types of communities that are, collecting things from across different industries and kind of being able to help us get a quick view of some of the important trends. Any team has to have awareness of just what's going on in business and the world. And so obviously staying up to speed on just what's happening in general is pretty important, even in learning, right? And I think also just thinking about new technologies, the pace of change there is so fast. Even just we're a Google shop. So we are fortunate to use Gemini as our kind of main AI tool. And the number of different tools and resources coming out just in the AI space alone is staggering, trying to understand what's going on and all the new technologies. And of course, then their implications for learning. Notebook LM has come out recently for us. It's been around, but now we're able to use it within Equifax, which is awesome. And it's got some great applications for learning. So there's just so many things happening so quickly. What about you? Where do you go for those things? I always like hearing that from other people too, because you have to really be current.
yeah, yeah. I think I'm learning most from my day-to-day interactions with my colleagues, because there is
Yeah.
so much information about AI out there. It's who's tried it and how is that working? Other than standard training industry,
Yeah. PD.
ATD, Gartner. I love Gartner too.
Me
I
too.
think that's really important. I think keeping up with what's going on in our industry through Gartner is super helpful. You probably like books like I do. So,
Yeah.
do you have one or a couple that you would recommend that are must reads for L&D leaders?
I would maybe give a couple because I don't, not everybody likes the same kind of book. I'm a nerd, so I love reading and I love new books and always like hearing what other people are reading too. One that I think is kind of interesting is called Engaging the Rewired Brain by David Souza. It's about, especially as people have, social media, all the things that are going on, attention spans, and even how people think has changed so much in the last 10 years as compared to before, and keeping people's attention and, having things move from short term to long term memory and behavior change and all those things. So I find anything about neuroscience pretty fascinating and also pretty compelling. And I think that's a good one from a learning perspective because if we don't understand how our learners are thinking and processing, it's really hard to make effective changes through learning, right? I
Right.
think Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning is another good one, kind of in the same space. It's a little less sciency and a little easier of a read, I guess is a better way to say it. And then I think also Design for How People Learn by Julie Dirksen is another good one, kind of in that same vein. But all of those to me are good learning leader or learning professional reads. So those are, I would say, the ones like I'm in the process of reading Engage the Rewired Brain right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got to make a note on that one because I haven't heard of that one before. So the other two I've heard of. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us today. It's been a
Of
pleasure
course.
getting to know you a little bit better.
Same.
Well, as a token of our appreciation here at Training Pros, our focus is world reforestation and planting trees. And we would like to plant 5 trees in your honor in the wetlands.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course. Yes. Thank you
That's a
so much.
great way to pay it forward.
Yes, it is. And thank you so much for joining us today, too, and for sharing your wisdom and insight for others in our
Been
industry.
a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Learning Leader Spotlight. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us for the latest episode of Learning Leader Spotlight, interviews with corporate L&D leaders. You'll find links in the show notes to any resources mentioned on today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.